Hey, Gabriela, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brittany. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Of course, you are a scientist, and so I think we're going to get a little nerdy, a little sciencey today, right?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We're going to definitely have to define some things because we're going to be talking about microbiotas and microRNA and DNA and we're going to have to define some things, but I am so excited for it.
Me too. I will try to explain this in a very simple way so everyone can understand this and get fun on this process.
Perfect. Well, let's kick off the interview with you telling us a little bit more about you. Where are you from? What did you study? And then how did you end up studying, how microRNA affects fertility?
Right. I came from Argentina. I'm from Buenos Aires. I am a scientific researcher. I spent 15 years working with the most complex fertility cases in the world, mainly from Latin America and Spain. Spain is very important for us because it's the second biggest fertility market in the world. So we are very happy to have not also study the woman from Latin America, but also compare the result from the microbiota with Spanish women too. And not also from Spanish women, but also from women that travel for different countries from Europe, because Spain have the best fertility medicine in Europe. So we have our first baby born in Europe is a French baby boy. So we are really happy. Yeah.
Cool. And so you said Spain is the second biggest fertility market. What's the first?
The United States.
Got it.
Okay. That's why we want to repeat our science there.
All right, I interrupted you. So Argentina, did you get a doctorate or what did you study? Have you always studied fertility?
I am molecular biologist and I did my PhD in scientific medicine. So I'm a scientist dedicated to the medicine.
Yeah.
From the University of Buenos Aires.
Got it. Amazing. Well, what interests you so much about fertility? Is that what you did your PhD in?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a reproductive immunologist. I specialize in immunology and I apply the knowledge of immunology, which means inflammatory conditions, to fertility potential. And I spent the last years trying to replace the traditional immunological drugs that are used to control inflammation for food supplements in order to restore the fertility potential in the more complex fertility cases.
Whoa. All right. So why does inflammation in your immune system affect fertility?
Oh, because we have a reproductive mucosa, and this reproductive mucosa have a lot of very important functional role during fertility. For example, endometrial mucosa, the inner layer of the uterus, where the embryo gets implanted, is controlling not only the implantation of the embryo, but also the development of the placenta. And the placenta is a very important organ women only have. Endometrium is a very important tissue women only have, and it makes us unique, right? So it's a unique opportunity to understand endometrial microbiota, for example, or the role of intestinal microbiota on endometrial functionality. And it's very important to understand that endometrium is very important for women's health because it's like a biological sensor. It's full of immune cells that will change the functionality according to signals from microbiome, but also for different places. This is the place where microRNA takes a role. And according the state of the health of the woman, it will be able to enter in a process of implantation or placentation or not. Because pregnancy is a very hard condition for everyone. So we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
You can feel that you are healthy in general, but maybe it's not enough for gestation, right? We will need more immune metabolic balance in order to get pregnant. So the endometrium will check this. And if you're not okay, you are not able to implant, or you're not able to carry the pregnancy to the end.
Mm-hmm.
How can
a woman know if she has inflammation then, if she feels healthy, but she doesn't realize?
I spent the last 15 years trying to look for non-invasive markers of this inflammation that are affecting fertility potentials. And we developed a test when we include 5 different immunometabolic pathways that affect fertility potential with a blood test, a saliva test, and a vaginal swab.
Mm-hmm. So a woman would probably get this test at like a doctor's office, right? Like she's not going to buy this at Target, right? It's not like an at-home test to test herself.
Actually, it is.
Really?
They can, in the future, they can get it from a Target.
Cool.
Because you can get a blood test from a self-collection test.
Prick your finger.
With your finger, and you can print the blood drop into a cellulosa card. We send to a laboratory to analyze insulin level, vitamin levels, every immunometabolic pathway that is affecting fertility. You can split into a saliva tube and send the saliva tube to us or to our laboratory, to a CLIA lab. And from the swab, you can take this sample too at home. So it's a very easy self-collection test.
Cool. And so let's say a woman has inflammation. She didn't even realize it, but now she knows she has inflammation. This may be leading to the egg not being able to implant on the side of the uterus. What are ways that women can decrease their inflammation?
Well, it depends on the state of the inflammation process. At the beginning, they can get pregnant. It depends on the process and when the woman decides to start to seek for pregnancy, right? At the beginning, they can get pregnant, but maybe the inflammation will affect the vascularization of the placenta. And so you can have obstetric complications, third trimester, second trimester complications. Then you can get more inflammation in the placenta development, not vascularization, during the placenta development process. So you can suffer recurrent miscarriages. And if the problem continues and you get from an acute inflammation into a chronic inflammation, you will start an implantation failure problem. So you will not be able to get pregnant.
Yeah. And so what are the solutions though? Are there like drugs or how does one decrease it?
Since we realized that inflammation have a subclinical time frame of 10 years, we consider that infertility is the first clinical alarm of this silent and subclinical asymptomatic process.
Yeah, so the woman doesn't know she has this issue until she tries to get pregnant. So
exactly. She's not sick yet. She's in a process of getting a diabetes or a celiac disease or any other inflammatory condition. But in the meantime, we can prevent this condition and get the woman pregnant in the process if we replace the drugs for food supplements. Why? Because drugs screw up the microbiome. And the microbiome is the first barrier for an inflammatory condition.
Okay. All right. Well, I feel like I just wanted to ask those questions so we could get a baseline here, like what we're talking about, because we're about to dig deeper and it's going to get even more and more detailed oriented. So I wanted to make sure I asked some questions to like kind of set the stage. So with all of that, immunology, inflammation, fertility, all of that, we are now here and you're operating a company called Microgenesis. So why don't you tell our listeners, what is Microgenesis? What do y'all do?
Microgenesis is a company that will change fertility industry. We want to change fertility industry because fertility industry is looking for a baby, but it's not focusing in the woman health. And fertility potential is direct connected to woman health. So we focus on human health first. And we developed this non-invasive test, but also free of drug treatments to restore fertility potential before IVF, before in vitro fertilization procedures. Or if the couple needs IVF for other reasons, for example, azoospermic men or anatomical problem, tubal factors, etc., we can improve fertility potential in women with our test and treatment.
Got it. So what I hear you saying is, we've been so focused on making babies that we should have just been focusing on improving the woman's health because the baby will happen. But I also hear you saying there are sometimes, situations, whether it's the sperm or anatomy of the woman, that you do need IVF. But if you took your protocol or your, company solution, you could increase the chances of the success of that working out, right? I got that.
That's true.
Perfect.
That's true.
All right. So what is this test you have? And you keep talking about food supplements. So what are you testing? And then we'll get into the solution part too.
We realized that every immunometabolic pathway that is affecting the fertility potential during the time is connected to an intestinal condition. Intestinal, right? Yes.
Whoa. All right. I'm used to just talking about vaginas. So, all right, intestines. What do you have to do with my uterus?
Vagina conditions is linked to intestinal condition too. Let me explain why.
Yeah.
Microbiome, which means the microorganisms that are good for health. We need microorganisms to help us to metabolize vitamins, different elements to control our metabolism. Microbiome disbalances are connected to different diseases, for example, autistic childs, celiac disease, depression. A lot of conditions are linked to missing functional microorganisms in the intestinal microbiome, because these changes in the ecosystem of this microorganism will create different molecular signals. And these molecular signals are the ones that control the immune cells at the intestinal barrier. And the immune cells at the intestinal barriers controls intestinal permeability. So if you have increased intestinal permeability, you will have anemia, you will have chronic hypovitaminosis, you will have autoimmune disorders because this frontier will be corrupted. So every single inflammatory condition starts from there.
All right. So let me break that down. I heard you, and we have a lot of non-scientist listeners. So I'm going to break it down real quick. So what I heard you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have bacteria that live in your gut. We have 10 times more bacteria than we have human cells in our body, right? We're actually mostly bacteria. So we have all this bacteria in our gut. And sometimes that bacteria is imbalanced or just wrong. It has the wrong species of bacteria or whatever. And your immune system gets activated. Your immune system goes in there and starts to be like, figure this out, get balanced, right? And with that immune response, your intestines actually become permeable, meaning that things can pass through the sides of your intestines. And obviously that's not a great situation, because if things start to pass through your intestines, even on a small molecular level, and we're not talking about like, your hamburger is going to fall out. That's not it. But just like small molecules start to pass through the intestines, the rest of your immune system's like, oh my God, what is happening? And then they start to attack it too. And now you have this huge chronic like inflammation disorder all over the place. Right. And I assume the last piece is that then your immune system is like, look, there's bacteria in your uterus and vagina too. Let's attack that. Is that the last piece of that puzzle?
Exactly. Very nice
Yay.
explanation.
Did I break it down right? That's pretty much what you are definitely deep scientist. It's taken me a long time to explain science to like 5-year-olds. So that was my take on it.
That's great. We need only the last piece in this puzzle.
Okay.
Which means microRNAs.
MicroRNA, y'all. All right, microRNA. What's a microRNA, Gabriela?
MicroRNAs are very tiny molecules that controls genetic expression. But the most important thing is that microRNAs will be secreted according to the changes of the microbiome.
Okay. Is it the bacteria's microRNA or is it humans microRNA?
It's a human microRNA secreted in response to bacteria.
Yep. Got it.
Or missing bacteria.
Yep. Really quickly, I'm going to describe microRNA a little bit more. Again, I want to keep everyone here with us. So everyone's heard of DNA, right? And so DNA is actually transcribed into this thing called RNA, and then RNA becomes protein. And for a really, really long time, scientists thought RNA was useless. It's just the middleman. They don't really, RNA doesn't do anything, it just is the messenger, and then in the last 2 decades, we've realized, oh my God, sometimes RNAs don't become proteins. They actually have their own jobs and they go out and they do stuff and they're are really, really important. And so that's a microRNA is one of those RNAs that doesn't end up being a protein, but ends up being a signal to do something else, right?
That's right. But who is controlling RNAs? The microRNAs are controlling RNAs. So according to the microRNA expression, you will control RNA. So you will control the synthesis of certain proteins.
Okay. So so sometimes the RNA actually will go back to the DNA and say, hey, thanks for making me. I want you to make these RNAs now.
Exactly. Or stop doing that.
Oh, yeah. Or it says, no more of you. No more of that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, you're taking me back to college because whenever I give presentations, I like to personify proteins. So I would always be so this guy goes to that guy. And my professor would be they're not guys, they're trypsin, they're proteins, please stop. And I'm what? That's how it played out in my head. So you're letting me fulfill my personification of proteins again. Thank you.
I love to personify my biology. And those microRNAs will create a specific fingerprint. I mean, microbiome itself is a fingerprint. And we are studying just a part of it, which is connected to fertility.
That's right.
So we can identify the connection between the microbiome disbalance with the clinical problem in our patients through the microRNA signature.
So how do you find if it's in your gut or is it in your uterus? How do you find those microRNA signals?
Very good question. They are produced in the intestinal barrier, in the intestinal lumen, but they are able to travel every single place in the human body because they are very tiny.
Yeah. They're so bosses, they're total bosses. They just do whatever they want.
Exactly. Even control your behavior.
Yeah.
So it depends. The process where the microRNA are right now in your life, in this moment, we can connect this to the progression of the inflammatory condition and how it's affecting fertility.
Got it. Okay. So is it a blood sample, saliva sample, vaginal swab? How are you discovering the microRNA levels in women?
We measure the microRNA in the vaginal swab because we know that are produced in the intestinal barrier and they travel to the reproductive tract. So we want to know if they are in the reproductive tract right now in a non-invasive way. So we are doing this swab and we connect this information, the microRNAs, with the blood markers, insulin, autoantibodies, vitamins, etc. So we can predict or interpret the clinical impact of these microRNAs.
All right. So woman wants to get pregnant. She gets a vaginal swab. She finds out that she has these really high levels of microRNA that are associated with gut inflammation, which is associated with high immune response, which then could lead to her not being able to get pregnant or stay pregnant. What is your solution then for that? How do we help her?
First of all, we recognize the missing microorganism. You can lose biodiversity, different species in the microbiome ecosystem because we are using antibiotics, because we are consuming industrialized food that contains antibiotics and other medical chemical compounds that affects the functionality of different bacteria. So we are losing bacteria during the time. So we recognize which ones are the ones that you need to restore the balance. So we customize probiotic blendings. Probiotics are microorganism species, strains that will replace this specific and functional microorganism you need. So we customize the probiotic blending for you according to the test. Then we try to help you to control or will bring you dietary recommendations to avoid the problem in the future. So we need to understand that we need to select the food components that will improve our microbiome balance and avoid the ones that are harming our microorganism that we need, right? So dietary recommendation, customized probiotic blendings, and we use nutraceuticals, which means vitamins, amino acids, etc., to restore intestinal functionality, to restore the immunometabolic problems, for example, high insulin levels or autoantibodies, etc.
So how long does a woman have to, take this regimented supplements and food dieting and everything for you to see a difference in her microRNA levels?
According to our clinical study, we established a successful cycle of treatment of 90 days.
90 days. All right. Not bad. Not bad.
After this period of time, women are ready to get pregnant for other 90-day period. If they can get pregnant during this process, which only means 20% of them, they can repeat the 90-day treatment, nutraceutical treatment again. And that's it.
All right. So this, when I first met you, when I first heard about your company, I was like, all right, I've never heard about microRNA from your gut affecting your vagina and your uterus. I never heard about that. Okay. And then you told me about it. We had a great call. You told me about the science and I was like, all right, I'm in it. I'm buying it. She said, this is good. But like, you haven't shown it to prove, right? And then you showed me like all this data and success of fertility. And it blew my mind. You went from like cool science lady to like goddess science lady. Like I was like, oh, you did it. You did it. You're not just like writing about it and saying, wouldn't this be cool if it worked? But you actually showed that it works. So can you tell our listeners about like how many babies have you helped make and what kind of women, that was important to me, what kind of woman you were getting pregnant? It wasn't just a regular woman. It was a woman struggling with pregnancy. So tell us about that.
We decided to run our clinical study across Spain and Argentina with the hardest fertility cases because we want to prove our science in the woman that every single technology was for reproductive medicine was applied before and it didn't work. So we include 287 women that failed at least 4 in vitro fertilization procedures.
So 287 women who have tried IVF 4 times and it failed every time. So almost quote unquote hopeless, right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah. Okay. Wow.
Right. 40%, around 40% of them failed ovulation procedures before. That means in average were women at the age of 40 or 41 years. And
damn, Gabriela, you took that's a challenge. All right. So you're taking women over 40, they failed IVF 4 times. Like you had something to prove. You believed it. You knew it was good. Okay. All right. Sorry. I don't mean to give it away spoiler alert, it works. But go ahead.
It worked. We have 129 microgenesis babies born so far. That means that 75% of them get pregnant within 6 months after our treatment.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So 75% get pregnant. And then of what percentage do continue to, and then they have birth? Because I know that was one of the issues, right? Was not necessarily getting pregnant, but staying pregnant.
Absolutely. 60% of them carry the pregnancy to the end. So that means live baby birth.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Are any of the babies named Microgenesis? I always ask our fertility founders this. I'm like, are any of the babies named Mosey Baby? And they're like, no, I don't think so. But
no, but I feel like they are my babies too.
Yes, that's incredible. And so, what about the remaining women? Like, what is the, what are we going to do?
I mean, we found that 80%, which means 8 out of 10, these hardest cases have a proper dysbiosis, intestinal dysbiosis, which means microbiome disbalance.
Okay.
So that means that 20% of these 287 women have another problem not related to the intestinal condition.
So that's why your probiotics and stuff didn't really change anything, because it wasn't actually a inflammation based on gut health issue.
Exactly.
But the majority were.
Absolutely.
The majority were that. Wow. And like all the doctors were just not focusing on their gut health. They were focusing on everything else health.
Absolutely. That's why after we finished our clinical study 1 year ago, we started during the pandemic to evaluate women at the beginning of the journey, which means at the first IVF attempt, or even women that are trying to get pregnant spontaneously without in vitro fertilization procedures. So we extend our study to a fertility clinic in Zaragoza, Spain, and we recruited during the pandemic 11 women at the first IVF attempt, and 10 out of these 11 women got pregnant.
Wow. Oh my God.
And in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, we have our medical office, so we work direct with our patients here. And during the pandemic, we recruited 15 women at the beginning of the journey. That's mean before IVF procedures. Mm-hmm. And 14 out of the 15 women are already pregnant, which means that if we anticipate the painful IVF journey, which means in average 10 years looking for pregnancy spent on IVF procedures, we can get even more results.
So better results, quicker, and I would imagine less expensive, right? IVF is super expensive. So you're truly like disrupting the entire market with this, huh?
This is the point. Most of women are not able to attend to a fertility clinic for IVF.
Yep. So
this is a way to democratize fertility.
Yeah. Wow. What do you think that, all right, well, I'm going to put a pin in that question. Let me ask one more about microgenesis. So what's the next step? What are you going to do next? You proved it out in Argentina. You did it in Spain. So what are you working on now?
Now we are repeating the same in the United States. Mm-hmm. We will repeat our clinical study at Mold Clinical Center at Wayne State University in Detroit. Mm-hmm. It's a multi-center study, so women can be included in the study from different parts of the United States, from different fertility clinics. And we will include in this opportunity 106 couples that failed IVF procedure before. Mm-hmm. So we want to repeat the same proof of concept, but at the same time, because we don't need any regulatory approval for the non-invasive and the probiotics and the nutraceuticals, we will start providing the test for non-cost test and treatment for 40 women in the United States.
Oh, amazing. So when can, if we have women listening that are like, when can I use this as a consumer? What do you think the timeline on that is? Is it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
We will start with 40 women in January, recruiting these women in January. So after that, if we get good results, we will start working with OBGYNs from the United States. So we want to start working with them as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So we are estimating to launch our tests and treatment next year.
Yeah.
As soon as possible.
Amazing. So cool. I love microRNA. I love bacteria. My PhD was in, I worked in E. coli bacteria, and my whole PhD thesis was around a small RNA that affected mutation. So you are like, I'm like, yes, bacteria, small RNAs. I'm all for it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I wanted to ask you, do you think so here we have like gut health affecting women's health in other ways. Do you think gut health is affecting other types of women's health issues?
Absolutely. For example, vaginitis, endometriosis, PCOS, menopause, premenopause. We are trying to apply our platform to every single condition in women's health related to intestinal condition.
And is it just a hypothesis that potentially you could find microRNA markers, and if you balance the microbiome in the gut, then maybe menopausal symptoms will go down? Are those all hypotheses, or are there actually papers that show the gut health affects those things?
This is because we can split our clinical study in different groups of patients that already had endometriosis, PCOS, or premenopause conditions. So that's why we consider that this clinical data allow us to provide the non-invasive tests and the nutraceutical food supplements for everyone.
Oh man. Well, this has been so awesome. Seriously, so fun. You have been, you've taken me back. I feel like I'm still worth my PhD title. So fun.
Thank you.
I have two last questions for you that our listeners really enjoy. The first one is, we have a lot of aspiring FemTech founders that listen. And what is an area in women's health and wellness that you think still needs innovating?
I think fertility is the most important one, because new opportunity for women start when you have the right question. And the right question will be why the infertility women are not able to attend a treatment, or because IVF procedure is not a very effective treatment, but it's also very, very expensive in most of the countries. So I think IVF, reproductive medicine in general, is based on a 30-year-old technology. So we need more innovation in this field. And we need more innovation for women that are not able to pay for an IVF procedure. So I think fertility is very good opportunity for science, for entrepreneurs, especially we are women. We are two female co-founders in Microgenesis. Both of us are mothers, and we think in that way. This is very important, not only for women's health to prevent future inflammatory condition, but also for the babies. Because if we modulate microbiome functionality, we will prevent early onset diseases in the babies related to this condition in women.
Whoa. Okay. Yep. Well, that's what our tagline is. Women's health is everyone's health.
Exactly. Exactly. This is the idea.
Yeah. Wow. And our last question is, what do you think the FemTech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
I think that new markers will open when you have the right key, right? And in order to have the right key, we need to have more female entrepreneurs. And we need to have more female entrepreneurs that work in FemTech areas. So we need also female groups of investors that help female entrepreneurs to be successful.
That's right. Yep. Well, we get that suggestion all the time. We need more money, and the easiest way for us to get money is to have more women investing, So
it's not only about the investment, but also partner with people that know how go to the market, how to create a company, and all this difficult process for scientists.
That's right. Yeah, science. Oh, girl, I feel you. I feel you there. When I started my first company, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never taken business and accounting. I have literally zero clue, but I'm passionate and I have this idea and more. But scientists, once we get some knowledge around how to start a company, we're fantastic entrepreneurs because entrepreneurship is all about pilot testing. And that's what scientists do all day. We say, hey, I have an idea. Here's the data. I'm going to test it. Oh, look, the data says that I was wrong. No worries. I'll just go back to the beginning. Scientists are very humble like that. We just say, oh, well, look at the data said no. All right. And that's what entrepreneurs need. You know, they need to be able to say, hey, the market doesn't like that ad campaign or doesn't like that product color or whatever, and be willing to pivot and listen to the market. So I think scientists are the best entrepreneurs, honestly.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
Brittany.
totally. Well, Gabriela, thank you so much for your time today. You are amazing. I'm going to be thinking about my gut all day.
Thank you, Brittany. This was really fun and I'm happy to be here. So thank you for having me today.